One of the most confusing things about the English language is probably the amount of grammatical homophones we have. Here are just a few of them, and in this video I'll hopefully be able to help you distinguish between them, work out the correct and incorrect situations in which you would use them, and maybe persuade you that it's not all that complicated once you've got it figured out. We'll start with the unholy trinity of the English language, there, and there. This is one of the most common grammatical errors that we see, but here's the difference between them. There is used to denote location, as in there it is. A way of learning this could be to remember the phrase where is it, there it is. Where and there are spelt the same. You can also check it by replacing there with here, so correct would be there is my purse, which can be substituted with here, and incorrect would be I have their purses. If you try and substitute here in this example, you can see that it doesn't make sense. The next there is used to denote possession, for example, their shoes. A way to test this is by substituting it with another possessive pronoun, like his or her, to check that it sounds right. So their shoes can be replaced with his, and it still makes sense. But if you try to write there it is, replace it with his, and you can tell that it's wrong. The final there is a combination of the words they and are, they're going to the cinema. The apostrophe basically stands in for a letter that has been taken out, in this case, the letter A. You can simply test this by replacing it with they and are, they are going to the cinema, which still makes sense. So here are the rules of substitution for each one. Mixing up your and is also a common grammatical error, and sometimes the one that seems to annoy the most people. A way to remember this is by using the same rule as for there. The apostrophe is in place of something that has been removed, in this case the A of you are. So you are becomes your with an apostrophe. And similarly, if you think of the other your in the context of a list with other possessive pronouns, my, his, and their, none of these have apostrophes, so neither does your. Its is a contraction of it is or it has. Like with other apostrophe s contractions, the apostrophe is in place of something that's missing, in this case I or ha. So it's raining, it's awful, it's actually not complicated at all. It's without the apostrophe is used as a possessive pronoun to show ownership, so for example the lion and its trainer, the kitten and its fluffy tail. This rule can be quite difficult to grasp actually, as an apostrophe is usually used after a noun in English to denote possession, so in something like Henry's wives, the kitten's nose, the sloth's claw, an apostrophe is used. Just remember that on the contrary, in the case of a possessive it, an apostrophe is not used. Something which is a bit more archaic and usually related to older English speakers is the distinction between who and whom. These days not many people use whom unless they're trying to be really correct, but I'll explain the difference anyway. To use grammatical terminology, who is the subjective form and whom is the objective form. This basically means that who is subject to a verb and whom is used as the object in a sentence. So you could say, who is that man, and then with whom would you prefer to travel? A quick way to check if you're using the right one is to use the substitution method again. When you use who in a sentence, it should be able to be substituted for he or she, and whom should be able to be substituted by him and still make sense. So in the example, I gave a kitten to him, we can change him to whom, and you can see that it still makes sense. This is because whom and him are both objects of the sentence, and if you try to write I gave a kitten to he, and then I gave a kitten to who, we can see both times that it doesn't make sense in standard English. The last one I'm going to add on to the end here is the difference between practice and practice. Although they're pronounced the same, a good way of distinguishing between the noun and the verb is to look at the spelling, and then relate it to the spelling and pronunciation of the words advice and advise. If you remember that advice is the noun and has the same ending as the noun practice, and that advise is the verb and has the same ending as the verb practice, it's easier to imagine the pronunciation in your head and work out the distinction. There's a divide in the linguistic world between the schools of prescriptivist and descriptivist grammar. Prescriptivism is all about prescribing rules for language, and descriptivism basically means that language is subject to change. Personally, I'm on the descriptivist side of the fence, as I believe language is growing and changing all the time, so as long as the right meaning is conveyed, it doesn't really matter whether you say who or whom. However, the whole point of language is to communicate an idea effectively, so it's usually useful to at least know the rules of grammar and spelling just to make language more efficient. You could say that there are no rules, but it helps to learn them. I hope you enjoyed the video, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.